know that this topic of karma is difficult because one thing is, karma is like there's all these categories and all these lists, okay? So karma is put into the category of the most hidden phenomena. Like there is obvious phenomena that we can understand without any problems. For example, that what is it that we can? For example, when the Buddha says birth is suffering, old age is suffering, sickness is suffering, death is suffering. We don't need to argue about this. We all see that this is an unwanted thing. And even with that, sometimes people argue, but it's really not wanted. So that is obvious. Then, so that's an obvious phenomenon. We can understand this very easily. Then the next one is like slightly hidden phenomena. We can infer that this is so when it comes to the second noble truth, where it says karma and delusions are the cause for the suffering. With the karma, we don't know because we don't see these seeds ripening. This is the thing. But we can infer that doing actions with negative emotions, they cannot create happiness for both parties, let's say. They might create happiness for the one who's doing it, but definitely not for the one who is receiving it. So then, so that is like slightly hidden phenomena. And karma, rebirth, and all this, it goes into the category of most hidden phenomena, meaning only a fully awakened mind can really see why this has happened to these people now, what exactly they did, with what attitude and all that. So what's happening, we get a very simplistic kind of explanation of what karma is all about, but it's really difficult. So we just have to trust. And then this is what the discussion group was all about. If I trust this law of cause and effect, how would it affect my life? I don't know if we did discuss that, or if you wanted to. You did discuss it, yeah. So you have to figure it out. How will it? What will it do to my life? Will it be of benefit? Then of course adapt it. If it will be of hindrance, which can also be, because then you run around and you're feeling guilty all the time about all the things you did, and it doesn't help you nor anybody else. And this is what Westerners hear when we say everything that happens to us is a result of past actions. So, but we only hear it for the negative things. That is the problem. You know, when somebody says, "Oh, my husband, he left me," and da da da. "Oh, it's my karma." I never heard anybody say, "I have such a good relationship with my husband. This is my karma." I never heard anybody say that. For us, it's still, we take it as something external to us. That kind of, okay, somebody threw that karma on me, well, now I have to bear it. And we still think, because we grow up with this creator kind of image, which is very deep-rooted, so we still go like, hey, come on, it's not fair. As if somebody is there to look for the, to kind of create fairness. As you said, people are totally unaware of what they're doing. It's not fair that they're not getting punished. Whereas I, who am making so much effort not to harm anybody, and then I feel bad when I do it, and then it seems like the imprint starts to get deeper or something, I'm being punished. So we still have this image, there's somebody there who looks and decides. There's nobody there who looks and decides. So therefore, it's the same way. If you make a promise to somebody and you break the promise, you feel terrible. If you just do the negative act, you still don't feel good about it, but you don't feel so terrible. Like the consciousness knows, and therefore it creates, as I said, creates its own, if you want to use the word punishment, it creates its own punishment. So exactly how karma works, if, when, blah, blah, all this, it's very difficult, but you can, with the list that you have now, you can kind of figure out, is it a totally negative act? Is it half a negative act? And so on. But first, we're just encouraged to, at least, to try to control body and speech, which we can, to abstain from these 7 negative actions. Then with the mind, when we see that the mind is going into negative rejoicing or harmful thoughts, oh, I wish they get harmed, then we can, when we are aware of it, we can not follow these thoughts. So when you go like, you know, your neighbor just has a new car and you start to look at, go into internet, how much does it cost and all this, because you want to have a better car than him, or at least the same. This is what envy is. You spend your whole time just only getting the same things, or planning to get the same things as your neighbors or your friends or your enemies or whatever. Yeah. So when you see that your mind is going that way, you can, with awareness, you can stop it, and you say, I can rejoice for the neighbor to have a new car. He will go into suffering because of new car. When? When the first scratch happens. And you say, when someone. Who is that someone? It's us.
Someone.
I don't know. Okay. So this is why never buy a totally new car with no scratches. Then there's no suffering of getting the first scratch. Or if you have a new car, before you drive out of the garage, make a scratch. You can avoid a lot of frustration. Because again, you know, this view of permanent, we think that we will be able to keep this car until it goes to the graveyard, car graveyard, without any bumps and without any scratches. That's what we think. We don't see the nature of our existence as being impermanent. We don't see that everything goes out of existence. And a very good example is a very simple battery. When I put it in, I know it lasts about a year. When it stops after a year, I'm surprised. Now, funny enough, you see, it's when we see impermanence daily, we're not surprised. Because again, the mind sees it and then it starts to understand it. Flowers. Nobody is depressed when flowers go, yeah? With your telephone, you have to charge it up almost every day. So you're not going, when the akku is empty, you're not going, oh no, like you do with this battery like this, is it? Or are you?
Not true.
Huh?
For most of us.
Nobody.
You do say, oh no, my battery's dead. What am I supposed to do now?
Really? No. You know exactly. I didn't plug it in, therefore it is dead. It's like it becomes a very natural fact. We're not reacting the same way as we react with the clock.
Expect it to last longer.
Yes.
Expect it to last a few days of usage before it...
Then don't use it, and then it will last. It's okay. But you see what I mean? Because we have to plug it in almost every day, we understand that it runs out. It's impermanent. So when it shows its impermanence, yeah, okay, we might be disappointed, but it's not the same reaction as with the clock. With the clock is first we shake it, isn't it? Or we tap on it. Maybe it's something in the clock, it's not the battery. With the telephone you wouldn't shake it. Yeah. Also with the telephone, which is very good, you can see how it decreases. Yeah, so if we would have that with our life, that would be fantastic. You know what? People would end their life before it's finished because they couldn't bear it, seeing it running out. I know people who were sick and they knew they were going to die, they committed suicide because they couldn't bear the thought. I mean, how much more, I don't know how to call this, pervert can we be? That you bring your death forward because you cannot bear that you're going to die one day. So, but with the karma, it's like what people usually hear when they hear it for the first time. It's your own fault, so therefore don't complain. You're being punished. You deserve it. This is what we hear, isn't it? And this is why it's difficult to hear. But it really helps if we start to take this on board, because as I said, if I know that I have created some negative action, I just have a dizzy spell actually. Sorry, there's another thing I keep having. So sometimes it stops and sometimes it doesn't. So I need to tell you, otherwise you say, well, what's wrong with her? So it's not a system of reward and punishment. It is like, if I know that I have created the cause, I know where it comes from. I have like an ear that buzzes and I don't hear in that ear, so it's imbalance. So There's no point blaming somebody else. Or when you go on a bicycle and you fall off and you hurt yourself, who is to blame? The one who made the bicycle? You yourself. But this is another kind of human sport. We always try to find the one to blame, which is hardly ever us. Like with the thing, somebody made a scratch. It's so natural. It's so, you don't find your shoes out there because you forgot where you put them. Like let's say you put them inside and you forgot, you go out, what's your first thought?
Someone stole it.
Yes.
Who took it? First thought. It's such a habit. It is such a habit.
It's good.
Huh?
It's good.
What?
Who took it?
It's good too?
I say it's good to see who took it. Not, it's not my problem. It's not. It's easier.
No, it's not, because if you know that it's your fault, you can do something about this. If it's somebody else's fault, what are you going to do? This is another wrong view. We think it's easier when we give the blame to somebody else. How are you going to change somebody else's mind?
For the short time, it give us an answer. For the long time, of course.
It gives us no answer whatsoever, I think. Isn't it? Doesn't make you feel better anyway. So, but taking responsibility, it takes courage. Let's say when you made a mistake where you work, and then the national sport is to hide it, isn't it? Because nobody wants to make mistakes. We think we're so perfect that we shouldn't make any mistakes. First we get angry at us, and then we try to hide it, and we try to blame somebody else. Makes everything so complicated. Yeah. What if people would learn just to come out and say, sorry, excuse me, made a mistake, I'm really sorry, I don't like to make the mistakes, but it happened. What can we do now about it? That would solve the problem. But looking for days sometimes who is to blame and going back in all the emails and all the messages, it's not really helping, but this is what is being done. Because we don't want to be the one to blame, because we're so perfect, we think. Isn't it? So with the karma, is that okay? Can we put it to rest? Yeah? What we think about the garden, that would be the best way. Maybe one more thing. Why there's these 10 negative actions? Because especially the ones of body and speech, they are by nature negative. This is why it's like, even if it's done with a good motivation, it's still, the action itself is still negative. Why? Because when it's done to you, you don't like it, you suffer. This is why. This is why there's this list of the 10 negative actions. And of course there's a lot of other things that are negative, and, but there it depends much more on the motivation. Okay, so we continue page 11. We come to the middle scope now. One, two, three, four. We're on stanza 5. So if you, these 4 puzzle pieces that we did until now, yeah, that you have 4 puzzle pieces, or 5 when we take the guru as well. So the one who is presenting this path is a master, is somebody who was trained in this path, so that's the foundation of your practice that you need. Then we start to appreciate the precious human rebirth. We start to understand that it doesn't last, so if we want to do something, we have to do it now. And then we ask kind of what comes next. We don't know, so we ask the Buddha, or we trust the Buddha that what he says is right, so that means taking refuge. And then the 5th one is karma. So if you really take care of your actions, and you purify all the negative actions, and you learn also to have a positive state of mind, even in a difficult situation like at the time of death. If you die with a positive mind state, then a positive karmic imprint will be activated and will then throw you into your next rebirth, which will be probably a human rebirth. Okay? If you have a negative state of mind at the time of death, you have a great chance that a negative seed is activated, and that will then result in a suffering rebirth, like hell beings, hungry ghosts, or animals. This is why it's so important to keep the minds of the dying people virtuous and calm. Now, it doesn't mean that you lose all your positive karma that you have created in this life and in past lives. You take it with you, but it's very difficult for it to ripen. Like, for example, if you're reborn in a place like Syria, it's very difficult for the positive imprints to ripen because the conditions are so bad. If you're born in a place like Switzerland, you have a lot of chances that your positive imprints will ripen, but those are not sure. We have no guarantee. We cannot make them ripen. We have no guarantee what to do. The only kind of control that we have is to try to keep the mind virtuous, because then there's much more happiness, there's much more pleasant feelings, and like this. That's the only guarantee. But we still don't have a full guarantee. Anger can befall you, desire can befall you, depression can befall you, despair, anytime. This is what is called samsara. So when we do these 5 things, and we are reborn as a human every time round, then we need to look, is it really so great to be a human? And then we look at the negative sides of being human. We look at the suffering or the dukkha of samsara. So now we talk here about especially the first 2 noble truths. Okay? Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. Are you with me? Page 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th stanza. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. So the bliss of liberation, liberation from suffering, and from dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and also the liberation from the causes that create dukkha. Okay? So if we go to page 8, it's in the middle of your booklet. So the Buddha started by saying, hey, look, understand, this is present in your life, and this is not satisfying. This is dukkha. This is suffering. So he didn't start by saying, if you do this, then this will happen. First he started to say, hey, look, you're sick. Because it's only when we recognize that we are sick and that we are not so well that we start to look for the causes. Okay? So then we look at these different types of suffering. The 3 types. So each of them is going more subtle. Okay? I will not turn my head anymore because otherwise I'm going to fall off the chair. So it's the suffering of pain. This is what's happening to me right now. The whole room is turning. So maybe I should stop. Huh? Yeah, you know it lasts 2 hours until it finishes.
It's okay, it's okay. It's okay.
And I have to lie down because otherwise I won't finish.
It's okay.
Sorry, it happens more and more often. It used to happen only from time to time. The good thing is once it happens, after 2 hours it's finished. Who wants to take over? Niv? Shoshana, you want to talk to them about suffering? I go lie down, come back in 2 hours?
Okay, but I'll need some...
Well, it's all here, you know, you explain what is the suffering of pain, the 6 sufferings and the 8 sufferings.
Okay, but if I'll have 5 minutes to go to...
Huh?
Okay, but there is a booklet that I will need to...
Yeah, the booklet is here.
I see. Okay.
And so you just go through these and then you can talk a little bit about afflictive emotions.
So I'll just...
And whenever I feel better, I come back.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Well, yeah, it has to be okay. There's not much I can do. I'm not doing this on purpose. And it's really
I'll
unpleasant.
walk you to your room because I have to take my
I'll go with her.
I'll
You'll
see
go
if
with him? Nick will
I'll
go
see
with
if it
you?
works.
No, somebody
You
will
know,
go.
this is